Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back. We're going to be continuing on with the next section of letter 1 in the Christ letters, the truth. So we just read about Jesus performing his first healing, and his first opportunity has been brought to him to share his message. So let's go ahead and continue on. His words were met with a great clamor of jubilation, excitement, disbelief, questioning, laughter, and congratulations. The boy's mother stood there, her face wreathed in smiles. After that, there was no question of needing accommodation. When Zedekiah told the astonished comforters that the boy was cured, and the youth himself appeared smiling at the door and asked yet again for food, the well-wishers, one and all, gathered around me and invited me to their homes. However, I preferred to remain with the boy's father, who now said he had many questions to ask me. He hoped I could answer them. After food and wine were placed on the table and everyone was invited to eat their fill, Zedekiah sat down and asked his first question. He said, "You have done something no priest or doctor could do. Healing only comes of God. Although you are a stranger, I perceive you must come from God." "Yes," I said, and the people murmured wonderingly. "This illness which has come upon my son, was this a punishment for something I have done wrong in the past? And how could I commit so grievous a sin that God should want to take away my only son from me?" Many of the people nodded when they heard these words. "You have asked the question I most want to answer, Zedekiah. God gives us life and being. He would not snatch these away as a man will snatch some treasure from another man because he is angry with him. This is the way that mankind behaves, not God. And God is not placed on a throne in some part of the sky like human kings sit on thrones and govern their people. This is the human way and a human belief, not truth. The way of God is far beyond anything the human mind can devise or dream about. I alone have seen that which has brought us into being, and I know that it is not the kind of God taught by the rabbis. I saw that it is perfect love, and for this reason I would rather speak of the Father, for I have seen that it works within every living thing, keeping them in a good state of health, even as a human father works to keep his children well fed, clothed, and protected within the shelter of a home. I have seen it within everything in the world." "How can that be?" a man asked doubtfully. "It is not possible for an individual being of any kind to be everywhere at once, but the air is everywhere, although we cannot see it. Nonetheless, we know and do not doubt it is very real and very important to our existence. If there were no air and we could not breathe it, we would die. The movement of air, which we call wind, we cannot see, but we see it agitates the leaves and drives the clouds across the sky. So we know the air is around and above us, and it is strong. And now I will ask you, what is the most real and valuable part of a man, his body or his mind?" Some answered it was the body, otherwise he would have no place on earth, could not work, could not be seen, would not be known. Others said they thought that his mind was more important than his body. And I answered, "His mind is the most important part of him, since without his mind he could not power his body. He would not eat, drink, sleep, move, plan, or live. Yet we cannot see mind. We can only know we have a mind because of the thoughts it produces, and because the thoughts fashion some kind of action in our lives. We believe mind works through the brain. Yes, it does. For how could brain, born of flesh, produce thoughts, feelings, ideas, plans? And now it should be clear to you that this is how the Father is present within all things. It is the directing mind behind the human mind, working its great works within every living thing. It is the directing mind behind the human mind. I was going to read that twice. We know this is so, for we see the marvels it brings about. We see the growth of children. We see the food they eat miraculously changed into another substance, which nourishes and makes them grow. How this happens, we do not begin to know or even imagine. Even if we did know, we should still not know what sets such an important life process to work in living bodies of every species. See how wonderfully the bodies of each species is fashioned and created purposefully, expressly to transform the kind of food they eat into nourishment to grow bone, blood, and flesh. Now you show us these things, we can see they are truly marvelous, a young man exclaimed. They are. We see the young bodies going through their various stages of development, and we see their minds keeping pace with their physical development until the youths and maidens begin to long to find a spouse and to become parents themselves. Then the great work of conception is accomplished, and the growth of the seed within the womb continues until it comes forth as a full-term child. Think, who determines all this steady, orderly growth within the woman? From whence come the plans which govern the right development of head, body, and limbs, and are unvarying from one woman to another, and from one species to another? Who decides the exact moment when birth shall begin? The physical means by which the child shall be brought forth from the womb, the provision of milk for the child. Think, is it the mother? No, it is not the mother. She is but witness to all that takes place in her from the moment her husband has been to her and planted his seed to join with hers. Does God do all these things from afar? Do his thoughts reach out to each man and woman and decide when these things shall take place? No, all this work is accomplished by the creative mind power, the intelligently loving life within every living thing. We see the parents' love of their young, be they bird, animal, and man. Where does this love come from? It is drawn from the creative mind power, perfect love of the Father within us. It is because the Father does the work within the plants, the trees, the birds, animals, and man himself that we are here today, living, breathing, eating, sleeping, having children, growing old, and then dying to pass on to some more happy place. All of this is the work of the Father active within us. How can you possibly deny the truth of all that I have said tonight? Today, you saw a dying youth brought back to fullness of life again within a short time. Was it I who healed him? Not at all. Of myself, I can do nothing. It was the life that is the Father active within all things, which came in full force to repair an ailing body and bring it back to full health again, because I believed it would and did not doubt. There were sighs of satisfaction in the room. New light, new interest, even new gentleness showed in their faces. Why then does man suffer so grievously? Miriam asked. Because when man is begotten, when life takes on form within the seed, it takes on the humanhood which separates it from every other individual in the world. To make it single, a lone figure, joined to none other, solitary, private, its own person, it becomes subject to, is controlled by, two mightily strong impulses in his earthly nature: to hold fast to all those things he greatly desires, and to reject and push away all that he does not want. These two most basic impulses in man underlie every single thing he ever does throughout his life, and are entirely responsible for the trouble man brings upon himself. Although the Father is active within man, it has nothing of humanhood in it. Therefore, the Father holds nothing, rejects nothing, condemns nothing, does not even see wrongdoing. All that man does, which man calls sin, is only of this world, and is only punished within this world. For it is a law of earthly existence, as you know, that whatever you sow, you will reap as a like harvest. Because he draws life and mind from the Father, man himself is creative in thought, words, and deeds. Whatever he thinks, says, does, and believes returns to him in like form sometime later. There is no punishment from the Father. Whatever ills come to mankind is of their own making entirely. People murmured that this was a new teaching altogether, and yet it made greater sense than all they had been taught before. Several voices urged me to tell them more. I'm just going to move something back here. I tell you, in me you have seen the life active as healing. Follow me, and you will hear of the path you must walk to find happiness. In my words, you will find the truth of existence, never yet revealed by any other man. It has been said of the Messiah, he will utter secrets hidden from the beginning of creation. I tell you truly, these secrets you will hear from me. If you listen carefully and grasp their meaning and practice their truth and hold fast to their laws, you will be made new and will enter into the kingdom of heaven. After I had spoken, the people were quiet for a moment, and then there was a clamor of excited talk. But Zedekiah stood up and said it was time for the household to settle down. His boy needed sleep, and his wife and daughters, too, were weary after all their weeping. It was arranged that, the next morning, I should go down to the harbor and sick people would be brought to me. Thus, I was able to launch my mission, and everything was speedily arranged for me in the best possible way. It seemed that if I did not heal, there would be no interest in and no acceptance of all I had to tell them. Healing demonstrated the truth of what I wanted to teach, and my teachings would explain the reasons why I was able to bring them healing from the Father. When I woke the next morning, I felt joyously alive with the expectation of wondrous things to come. After I had broken my fast, I set out with Zedekiah towards the town harbor, my heart aglow with love for everyone I passed. I greeted them warmly, telling them I had good news for those who wanted to hear it. When I reached the jetty, I found men, women, and children seated on the ground, awaiting my arrival. Some held out their hands to me imploringly. These looked very ill. Some were crippled, many were covered in sores. My heart still ached for their pitiful state, but now I could also rejoice because I knew that it was not the Father's will they should be like this. Quite the contrary. The Father was itself all healing, all health, all fitness. I had proved this the night before and in my home. I exulted that I would be able to demonstrate this wonderful truth to the crowds now gathering around me. One sad old face caught my attention. She was wrinkled and thin and crooked. I went to her, and kneeling beside her, I placed my hands on her head and immediately felt the flow of Father power through my hands, vibrating through her head until her whole body shook with the life force energizing her limbs. People watching this were very astonished and wondered what I might be doing to her, but others quieted their objections. Gradually, her limbs began to unbend, lengthen, straighten. Her face became alive with the joy of returning strength. I helped her to stand up. Then she stood proudly by herself. She was so overcome with happiness, she began to weep, then laughed and danced, calling out to the people. "Praise God," she said, "praise God." And others standing there took up the refrain. They were all deeply moved by what they had seen. The crush of people pressing in against my person was so great, Zedekiah offered to control them. In orderly fashion, assisted by other eager onlookers, he marshaled the sick towards me, that I might attend to them according to their deepest need. At last, feeling tired, my host invited me back to his house to dine. He sent away those whom I had not been able to heal for lack of time. He assured them I would return the following day. It was a festive evening, so much to talk about, so much to celebrate, so much to teach, so much to learn. All of it certainly good news, the people agreed. I knew that by many I was accepted as speaking truly of what I had seen in the desert. And so it continued for many days. People came to see me from far and wide. Zedekiah and other of his friends helped me to control the crowds to enable me to heal and teach. The people listened gladly. They were talking amongst themselves about the Father and were eager to learn more about the thongs and chains which bound people in misery. The crush became so great, I soon realized I would have to find my own helpers on whom I could rely to assist me. It was time for Zedekiah to return to conduct his leather business, which he had been neglecting. I went away to the hills to pray about choosing disciples. When the conviction came to me that I would be guided as to whom to choose, I returned to Capernaum. I felt a strong inclination to go down to the waterfront to speak to some men I had seen listening intently to my teachings. Whether they would leave their fishing nets to join me remained to be seen, but when I called them, Simon, Andrew, James, and John, they came immediately, happy to help in my work of healing and teaching. Others also joined me as I began my work amongst the people. I left my host, Zedekiah's house, with his warm assurances I could return at any time. I'll read just a little bit more. Thus it was that I commenced my mission as a teacher and healer, wandering wherever needed through towns and villages. Before setting out, I gathered together the young men who had consented and were eager to help me. They would be listening to my teachings and would be mystified by much that I wanted to say. It was vital I should first explain the background to all that had been revealed to me in the desert. I told them that despite my previously lazy way of life, I had always had a profound compassion for people. It was my compassion that made me turn from the God taught by the rabbis. When I spoke of my total rejection of a punishing Jehovah, I could see the doubt and shock in their faces. At considerable length, I explained that I questioned how it was possible to speak of a good God when there was so much suffering endured by innocent children. As I spoke, I saw their faces gradually relax. I continued to voice my previous doubts and anger until I saw their expressions change into those of acceptance and then full agreement. I discovered I had put to them their own doubts and questions, which previously they had never had the courage to put into words. As we spoke together, I could sense their relief that they were no longer alone in their secret resistance to the rabbi's teachings. I told them there came a time when I began to realize ever more clearly that I was wasting my life. I wanted to change, and I felt very strongly I should go to John the Baptist as a starting point, as it were, to the commencement of a new way of living. I described what happened during the baptism and my 6 weeks in the desert. I explained that all my previous thoughts and beliefs, attitudes, arrogance, rebelliousness were gradually cleansed from my consciousness, whilst I was going through the deep revelations and visions showing me the reality I now called the Father. I explained the nature of the Father and that this divine nature also constituted the divine will. I told them that it was man himself who, through wrong thinking and wrong behavior, shut himself off from the Father within him. And man alone, by first repenting and then by mental emotional cleansing, could find his way back to the full contact with the Father. When this was accomplished, the full nature of the Father would be released into the person's mind, heart, body, soul, and his life environment and experiences. As this happened, such a person would enter into the kingdom of heaven ruled by the Father, and also the kingdom of heaven would be established within the consciousness of the person. He would then have attained the purpose behind his existence. Let's see. Okay. As I spoke to my disciples, I saw the reactions reflected in their faces. All doubt had gone. There was now a light of dawning comprehension and joy. These young men became enthusiastic believers and exclaimed, "This is indeed good news." However, after their first acceptance of all I said, there were times when they wondered whether all I said could be true. I understood this. To be prepared to rid themselves of the image of Jehovah so deeply imprinted in their minds took a great deal of courage. There were times when they spoke amongst themselves and questioned, who was this man claiming such marvels? Supposing they came along with me and it turned out that I was really a messenger from Satan, what then? They would be severely punished by Jehovah. They had much to lose. their standing in society as sober, hardworking young men, their reputation as tradesmen and artisans, their loss of income, and biggest obstacle of all, the probable anger and rejection by their families. What would they receive in return? I told them I could not promise them any earthly reward for their help in spreading the gospel of good news. I had no doubt at all that wherever we went, we would be given food and shelter and would be well received by the people. I could only promise them the truth that the Father knew their needs and would fulfill them and keep them healthy. I could also promise them that as they turned to the Father and trusted the Father every step of the way, they would be happy in a way they had never been happy before. They would experience the kingdom of heaven themselves to the extent they set aside the demands of self and served other people. They would witness the healings, and these would increase their faith and give them the courage to endure any discomforts of the journey. And this is how we came to start on our mission of spreading the good news of the gospel of the kingdom. I sent these young men ahead of me into the town we were to visit. As they entered it, they told the people to gather together to hear the good news of the kingdom of heaven. The people were astonished and wanted to know more, but the disciples urged them to fetch their friends and neighbors, and they would be told all about it when Jesus arrived, and there would be healing of their sick people. Excitedly, many ran to help spread the good news, and soon they were gathered together in a huge crowd. We'll go ahead and stop right there. Thank you all so very much for joining me. And as I said earlier, I don't want to put any of my opinions. I'm not going to stop reading in between to share any thoughts that I may have. But the one thing I wanted to say before I started this video that I forgot to say is you have to remember that when Jesus starts to talk about the way that a child is not conceived, but perhaps the way that they're created in the womb, and some of the things that we're going to discuss, you have to remember that 2,000 years ago, because if you recall, remember Jesus said, take yourself back to that time. And then also, with some of the information, you can relate it to where you are right now, but with some of it, you want to take yourself back to that time. And remember that there was no science the way there is now. They did not know the process of the way that a baby grows into a mother's womb. They did not know many of the things that seem so basic to us, that seem so well known that they're almost not miraculous anymore, but truly they still are. But back then, they didn't know these things. These were brand new and fresh things that they were hearing and taking in. So the astonishment must have been great, even though to us, now we can pinpoint every single part of the development from conception to birth, and we know what it looks like, and we know all of the ins and outs of it. So it's not as much of a surprise for us, but most of it was very brand new to all that he shared this information with. So I want you to keep that in mind with a lot of things that he's going to talk about and the astonishment that the people had and their reason for it. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to put I have 3 bookmarks going in this book. For me, this is the 3rd time that I will be reading it. I'm also kind of slowly reading it on my own. My husband is reading 1 or 2 pages at a time, and now I'm reading it to you. So I have 3 places set, and I'm trying to keep them all straight. That's okay. I always find my spot. All right. Thank you all so much for joining me. I love you all very much. And until I see you again, take care of yourselves, take care of those around you, and I will see you for our next section of Letter 2. Take care until then. Bye-bye.